Rudy Gobert, it's been feeling like he's been public enemy number one. I'm not quite sure what started it all. Joe Ingles talked about it, and he thinks it's because of the COVID thing, and everybody thinks he's the one that, was the reason why these leagues shut down. Rudy Gobert is quietly a 3-time defensive player of the year. He quietly has all of these accolades, yet he gets treated like he's just another guy in the NBA when he's been a huge part to the Utah Jazz's success. Now, I want to ask you, do you think Rudy Gobert gets way too much disrespect? Where do you see him amongst the top players in the NBA? And yeah, what are your thoughts on Rudy?
I think Rudy falls in the line with analytics versus hoopers. I think he falls into that battle, but because I think analytics back him up so much. And I think hoopers don't respect him. Even with Pat Bev comments, he doesn't guard the best players. So I don't think, bro, shut up. It's not just it's not just about guarding the best players. Kawhi doesn't always guard the best players. Draymond doesn't always guard the best players because perimeter defense is important, but it's not the most important thing. Defense is an everything thing. It's about you're like a safety on the court. It's about controlling your team defenses. I think it's more impactful than perimeter defense because that's just a solo thing. Mm-hmm. You can have perimeter defenders, but I think a guy who can control his whole team on defense, like a Draymond, like a Rudy Gobert, I think those guys really impact teams because they make. You see the team when Rudy Gobert's off the floor. They're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Mm-hmm. But when he's on the floor, they're historically, beautifully, magically great on defense. So I think, like I said, this falls into the line of analytics versus hoopers. You know what I'm saying? You think Rudy Gobert, he averages, 12 points? People think, oh, he shouldn't be this. He shouldn't be that. I think people just forget there's a whole other side of the game. It's not just offense and putting the ball in the hoop. There's defense. Defense matters. Defense is why some of these teams don't win. It's because, especially these young teams, they don't play defense. Rudy Gobert, like you said, quietly has won 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. You know who did stuff like that? Dwight Howard. And Dwight Howard was viewed as a top 5 player in the league. He didn't score that much, but he was viewed as a top 5 player in the league. He went to the finals. He changed the game. And Rudy Gobert may not be as good as Dwight, but he nonetheless has changed the game for his team. And he's put his team in comfortable positions every year to make the playoffs, to make deep runs. Now, you can say what you want last year about him being a liability against the Clippers. Okay, but you can also say Utah hasn't built good enough defenders around him so that he can he can stop doing everybody's job for them, which he's elite at, by the way. So I think, guys like that just hate on Rudy Gobert for no reason. I view him as a top 20 player in the NBA. I think he's in that discussion. He has to be. His defense is just so much better than a lot. We put guys who are in the top 10, top 15 with no defense. For example, I'm not saying he's better, but Trae Young, no defense, but his offensive game is so much great that we put him in that discussion. So I think Rudy Gobert, his defense matches a lot of guys' offensive game. So I think he should definitely be at least a top 20 player in the NBA.
So the initial question, are people mad or holding like a vendetta against Rudy Gobert? I don't know if I would go out and say that people are mad at Rudy Gobert still.
Why do you think people don't give Rudy Gobert the credit that he deserves?
100%. Listen, ultimately what I think it comes down to, and me personally, obviously someone who watches the game, who appreciates the game, can appreciate a guy who is very technical and very meticulous at what he does best. And that Rudy Gobert, in terms of rebounding, he's arguably the best rebounder in basketball right now. Shot blocking, arguably the best blocker in basketball. Arguably the best defender. Right now, he has the second highest defensive rating. But I think what it comes down to, he's not the most exciting to watch. And it does not help that he plays in Utah. Say what you want about Utah. Listen, we love Utah. Utah has done a great job in supporting us. Public media, or mainstream media, does not find Utah appealing. And in terms of them translating that into broadcasting Gobert's game or even Donovan Mitchell's game, they refuse to. As great as Gobert has been, I think his player efficiency rating ranks 9th right now in the NBA. He's been spectacular. But because he's not the most exciting, people aren't paying attention to him. And I feel it's unfair because you look at back in the day and people's game were so much more refined, but they didn't necessarily have to be the most flashy. All they cared about was winning. Nowadays, if you're not showing something flashy on Instagram, if you're not getting a highlight dunk, people really don't care about what you're doing. Look at a Steph Curry, look at a Jimmy Butler. Steph Curry has changed the way that people watch basketball, had changed the way that people play basketball. He's a 6'3" dude that could shoot the lights out of a basketball. He's entertaining to watch. Jimmy Butler, he's entertaining to watch, but more so, he has a personality that you can just gravitate towards. Gobert isn't winning a popularity contest. What he cares about is playing basketball at the highest level that he can. And ultimately, that's what it takes a toll on how people perceive him or how people want to judge who he is as a basketball player. It's not more so about his skill, but how so you can relate to him to a degree. And I feel like that's where I feel a disconnect towards mainstream media and actually caring about what a player does on a basketball court.
I think the cycle of disrespect towards Rudy Gobert stems from his contemporaries first and foremost. We saw on All-Star Weekend or All-Star break last year when LeBron James and Kevin Durant, or I think it was LeBron James, made a controversial statement saying, like, bro, nobody uses the Jazz in 2K. Like, who uses the Jazz? And I felt like LeBron saying that with how much impact he has kind of negatively painted Rudy Gobert in, like, this type of, or the Jazz in general, in, like, a wrong light. Rudy Gobert is not the most flashy player. He does average 12 points. He doesn't really have a post game. He can't really shoot. But like he said in his interview, he doesn't really care what anybody thinks. He knows what he's on the court for. And when he's on the court, he's and I'm one of them. I was a person that up until last year, I'll say it. I thought this is going to sound crazy, but there was a time where I was debating who was better between Sabonis and Rudy Gobert. That's how much disrespect I had towards Rudy Gobert. I was wild. No, I know. I take it. I was wilding. That's how much disrespect I had. But when I started to check the statistics and the awards and his impact on defense, it's just like I've seen people have Rudy Gobert as a top 10 player solely because of his defense, how game-changing his defense is. I think in basketball, I'm pretty sure, I think they had him as a top 15 player in the NBA just solely based off defense. That's a great channel to watch if you want to like get in tune with basketball. But other than that, I mean, Rudy Gobert's style of play, like these guys said, I mean, it's not the most flashy, but his defense gets the job done. And to Rivers' point, I mean, Utah doesn't really have the collection of that good defenders. Like, you have Royce O'Neal, who is probably guarding your best wing. He's undersized. They're going to get to the paint on him.
I'm keeping it on. He gets cooked a lot.
He gets cooked a lot. And that's a guy that's like when I
Their
watch
premier defender.
He's an above average defender.
Yeah, it's sad to say because he's an above average defender and he's undersized. So I think, I kind of get Giannis vibes from this because not a lot of players started respecting Giannis. I think for Rudy Gobert to reach that type of level, I think Rudy Gobert would have to win a championship because up until last year, nobody in the NBA was really respecting Giannis in his game. At least pure hoopers weren't.
I hate, and we have to, this new NBA, right? These new guys, we have to stop getting mad at centers because they can't guard the perimeter. Like that's one of the things that boggles my mind. We get upset when centers can't guard perimeter players, and it's like that's not really a knock on them. They're a center. You know what I'm saying? They're not really supposed. Not everybody can be a Bam. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody can be an Anthony Davis, but not everybody can be a Rudy Gobert. You know what I'm saying? There's just different levels. He may not be, this offensive machine, but in terms of rim protecting, help defense, he's one of the best all time.
Defensive rebounding,
all time. Not many guys can say that. Like he's up there with the Hakeems in terms of numbers. He's up there with the Hakeems and the Dwight Howards in terms of statistics, in terms of elite rim protection and help side defense, shot alterations. Like he is like that for real. So I don't get it. Even in this comment section, trade Cat for Rudy Gobert. Ayton for Rudy Gobert. Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Ayton for
in
Rudy
terms
Gobert,
of just the regular season, the Utah Jazz wouldn't be as good without Rudy Gobert. You can say in certain playoff situations he wouldn't be playable. That's understandable. That's some bigs. I understand that. But in terms of playing up, like in terms of regular season and how they've been consistently great, you can't knock them. It's no way you can.
Gobert means more to the Jazz than Donovan Mitchell. I'm asking.
Oh, I thought you were saying
Defensively, absolutely. 100%.
I mean, that's without a doubt. In terms of you take everything into account, who means more?
I think you have to go Donovan.
Really? And there's no strings attached to that. That's purely what you believe.
I think you have to go down just because it's basically when he walked in, they instantly became
True.
They went to the
a dangerous
round.
team.
True.
And his scoring, as of right, like his scoring is so dynamic and D Wade. Like you have to, say he's just. I don't think it's like a
I agree.
It ain't nothing
I
like
agree.
that.
I
But
agree.
I think it's just a little bit. I would go probably a little bit Donovan just because his scoring in the playoff time. You need that guy who can go get a bucket. I think Donovan is that type of guy.
I just think they complement each other well.
For sure.
Rudy Gobert, part of the reason why I think he gets disrespected is because NBA fans, they don't value rebounding and defense. If I told you somebody averages 23 and 5 and somebody else averages 15 and 15, you'd probably think the 23 and 5 guy is better just because we value scoring to that level. And you made an excellent point. You have these players who are pure scorers, and I'll mention one, Bradley Beal. Last year, he averaged 30. Because he averaged 30, although he was one of the league's worst graded defenders, people would automatically put Beal over Gobert strictly because of offense. But when we talk about defense, it doesn't matter what chart you look at. Any single advanced analytics stat or even basic stat, when you look at these defensive stats and charts, Rudy Gobert is the most impactful and the most effective, and it's not even close. Yep. So for a guy that's a top 2, top 3 defender in the NBA, his offense might not be a top tier. He's not a top tier offensive guy,
he's not.
But people have to realize that there's more to offense than just scoring. And just because he averages like 15 points doesn't mean he doesn't create opportunities for others, because in his rim runs, he creates a lot of open 3-point shots.
And it's funny because it makes you wonder, what would guys say to players like Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman, if they played right now? Like guys who had no offensive ability, but defensively they were masterpieces. You know what I'm saying? Like
even someone like Mark Eaton.
Yeah, what would they say to these guys that just had no offense and just were strictly defensive players? Like, what would this NBA with all the Twitter and Instagram and the jokes and the giggles? Dennis Rodman, I think, averaged at one point like 3 points. But he had like a 20-board game. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like he was ridiculous. Ben Wallace, he didn't offer any. He
never scored double digit in his career.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me how people just, like you said, view scoring as the end all be all. And I think that's
it's more entertaining.
The Hooper versus analytics thing. And I think it in large part is to guys on Twitter who just run up and, oh yeah, he has the bag. He's different because he can put the ball in the back. Mm-hmm. Bro, it's like a whole other side of the game that we just forget about. And I think that's what's missing in the NBA.